I watched Vice Principal Hammond screaming in the back of the police cruiser, his face pressed against the glass as he begged the arresting officers to believe him. He kept pointing his handcuffed hands frantically at Ezra, shouting that a quiet 16-year-old kid had systematically dismantled his entire life, his career, and his bank accounts in exactly 3 weeks. The local news anchors standing on our school lawn called us the tragic victims of a corrupted educational system, but they didn't know the chilling truth. This entire federal investigation started because of a stupid game of truth or dare. But to understand how I became the architect's accomplice, I need to take you back 21 days. Let me tell you about Ezra. This kid barely said 10 words a day, but somehow he was always there when we hung out. He never caused drama, never started arguments, and never volunteered opinions. He just existed in the background of our friend group like furniture. So when we were all sitting in the back corner of the library during lunch playing Truth or Dare, nobody thought he'd actually do anything crazy. It was Riley's turn. She looked at Ezra with this evil playful grin and said, "I dare you to sneak into Vice Principal Hammond's office and write something stupid on his whiteboard." We all laughed. It was harmless. Just a dumb prank to kill time before 5th period biology. Ezra didn't even hesitate. He just stood up, shoved his hands in his pockets, and walked out of the library like he was going to the bathroom. 5 minutes passed, then 10. We started making jokes about him chickening out or getting caught by the hall monitors. Riley was already planning her next dare for someone else. Then Ezra came back. His face was white, like actually drained of all blood. He leaned down over our table and whispered, "You guys need to leave right now." Nobody moved. We thought he was messing with us, but Ezra never joked around. Ever. He kept glancing toward the hallway like a SWAT team was about to breach the double doors and arrest us all. "Dude, what happened?" I asked, dropping my sandwich. "Not here. Outside." "Now," Ezra commanded, his tone completely foreign. We grabbed our backpacks and followed him out to the concrete courtyard behind the gymnasium, a dead zone where the security cameras had been broken since last year. My heart was pounding against my ribs. I thought maybe he broke expensive equipment or accidentally set off a silent alarm. Ezra pulled out his phone. His hand, usually so steady, was shaking slightly. I went into Hammond's office. The door was unlocked, Ezra said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I was about to write on the board when I saw his desktop monitor was active. There was a file left open. A physical file. He swiped his screen to the first photograph he had snapped. It was a scanned spreadsheet stamped with Hammond's official signature and the heavy embossed logo for Oakhaven Academy. Oakhaven was the new private juvenile reform facility that had plastered aggressive sponsorship posters all over our school hallways last month, championing a new zero-tolerance initiative. The document was titled, At-Risk Transfer Manifest. I pinched the screen to zoom in. My name was 7th on the list. Riley's name was 3rd. Beside each of our names were heavily fabricated disciplinary records. According to Hammond's official log, I was running a lucrative sports gambling ring out of the locker room, and Riley had violently assaulted a substitute teacher. Neither of us had ever gotten anything worse than a warning for being late to homeroom. The final column on the spreadsheet showed a specific dollar amount next to each student's fabricated profile, $12,500. "He's selling us," Riley whispered, stepping back as if the phone itself might bite her. "He's faking our permanent records to send us to that reform camp." "Not just sending," Ezra corrected, his voice hardening, stripping away the panic. Oakhaven is a private, for-profit facility funded by heavy state grants. They need constant bodies in beds to keep their government funding flowing. Hammond is their primary local supplier. He gets a referral kickback deposited offshore for every student he successfully exiles. We were standing in the freezing courtyard, for entirely average teenagers suddenly realizing our futures had already been sold to the highest bidder to buy a school administrator a new boat. Riley pulled out her phone, her thumbs flying furiously across the glass. "I'm sending this exact photo to the school board's anonymous ethics tip line right now," she declared. "My mom's a paralegal. She'll destroy him before 3rd period tomorrow." "Don't do it from the school Wi-Fi," Ezra warned, lunging forward to grab her wrist, but she had already slammed the send button. "It's done," she said, exhaling sharply, looking victorious. He's finished. She was disastrously wrong. Monday morning, an emergency assembly was called in the main auditorium. The principal was conveniently absent at a district conference, leaving Hammond pacing the center stage with a wireless microphone. He looked entirely too calm, dressed in a sharp navy suit, projecting the aura of a man in complete control. He stopped pacing and locked eyes with Riley sitting in the third row. Then, his gaze drifted up to the bleachers, landing with pinpoint accuracy on me and Ezra. He knew. He controlled the school's internal network infrastructure. He had intercepted Riley's anonymous email the millisecond it hit the local server. This school requires discipline, and lately, the behavioral rot has spread entirely too deep. Hammond's voice boomed off the concrete walls, silencing the murmuring crowd. He signaled 2 burly campus security guards, who immediately marched down the center aisle toward our row. Riley Vance. Stand up. 300 students turned in unison to stare. Riley froze in her seat, her face flushing crimson with sudden terror. "We found the stolen electronics in your locker this morning," Hammond lied flawlessly into the microphone, his voice dripping with manufactured disappointment. "Along with the disturbing written threats regarding the staff. You are an immediate danger to this student body." "That's a lie." Riley screamed, tears of pure frustration and betrayal spilling over. "You planted that. I sent the tip to the board. You're stealing money." Hammond offered a patronizing, pitying shake of his head to the crowd. Paranoia and severe aggression. Classic, tragic signs. This is exactly why the district board has approved your immediate involuntary transfer to the Oak Haven Behavioral Program. The guards grabbed her arms roughly, hauling her out of the plastic seat. As they dragged her crying down the center aisle toward the exit, Hammond walked to the very edge of the wooden stage, lowering the microphone to his side. He looked directly up at me and Ezra, his voice dropping to a harsh, venomous whisper meant only for our section of the bleachers. "You kids think you matter because you have a phone," Hammond sneered. "You're nothing. You're just furniture in my building. I can move you or throw you out whenever I want." I felt a surge of blind, reckless rage. I gripped the railing, ready to jump over the seat and swing at his smug jaw, regardless of the consequences. Before my muscles could tense, Ezra's hand clamped onto my shoulder with terrifying mechanical strength. I snapped my head to look at him. His expression hadn't changed at all. He wasn't scared. He wasn't even angry. He was calculating. "Let him talk," Ezra murmured, not breaking eye contact with the vice principal. He just confirmed his network architecture. We didn't go back to class. We walked straight out the front doors, bypassed the security gate, and went to my basement. The moment my heavy wooden door clicked shut, the quiet kid completely vanished. Ezra pulled a sleek, heavily modified laptop from his battered backpack, industrial hardware that looked like it belonged in a server farm, not a high schooler's bag. He intercepted the email because the school's outdated firewall routes all outbound district addresses through his administrative approval queue, Ezra explained, his fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard with a speed that made me dizzy. "It's a localized choke point to monitor teachers. But his arrogance makes him lazy. It means his personal banking encryption is tied to the exact same sloppy local server. We need to go to the actual police, Ezra. He's framing us with physical evidence. He planted stolen phones in Riley's locker." I paced the room, my panic rising. Cops need warrants. Warrants take weeks of bureaucratic red tape. "By Friday, you and I will be sitting in an Oak Haven cell wearing standard-issue jumpsuits," Ezra replied, his eyes locked on the scrolling lines of code. "We don't need a lawyer right now. We need to sever his supply lines." He hit the enter key. A massive cascade of green text flooded his terminal window. Hammond's offshore accounts are shielded by a Delaware shell company, but his communication with Oak Haven isn't, Ezra narrated his digital assault. "They use a proprietary web portal to approve the student bounties. I don't need to break his bank. I just need to break his reputation. Tomorrow is the District Finance Committee meeting in the library. Hammond is presenting the quarterly budget on the projector. I need you to pull the building's main electrical breaker exactly at 10:15 a.m. "A distraction?" I asked, stopping my pacing. It will plunge the library into darkness and kill the secure Wi-Fi node, Ezra said. In the 3 minutes it takes for the backup generators to cycle on, I'll be inside his physical office. Tuesday morning, 10:14 a.m. I stood in the suffocatingly hot janitorial closet in the basement, my hands gripping the massive industrial breaker switch. My chest was tight, but I vividly remembered the smug, untouchable look on Hammond's face when they dragged Riley away. At exactly 10:15, I pulled the heavy metal lever down. The low, constant hum of the building died instantly. Total silence enveloped the basement, followed seconds later by the muffled shouts of confused teachers upstairs. 5 minutes later, the backup generators kicked in, flooding the halls with emergency amber light. I met Ezra in the second-floor boys' bathroom. He was washing his hands, entirely unbothered. He turned and tossed a tiny black USB drive into my hands. "Did you get the authentication token?" I asked, still out of breath from sprinting up the stairwell. "Better," Ezra said, drying his hands on paper towels. "I got the primary payment trigger. Hammond doesn't just get paid sequentially when a kid arrives. He gets a massive aggregated annual retainer deposited directly from Oakhaven on the 15th of the month. That's tomorrow." That night, sitting in the glow of the monitors in my basement, I watched a 16-year-old kid surgically dismantle a federal crime ring. Ezra didn't just hack the offshore account. He completely rerouted the Oakhaven portal's financial API infrastructure. He didn't steal a single cent of the money. Instead, he changed the routing number to the local police benevolent association's charity donation fund, and altered the donor's digital signature to read, "An anonymous bribe from Vice Principal Hammond for Oakhaven Academy admissions." "He's going to notice $50,000 is missing," I warned, staring at the finalized script. "I want him to notice," Ezra said softly, leaning back in his chair. "But he can't stop the automated clearinghouse. Once the transaction clears tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., the charity software generates an automatic IRS tax-exempt receipt. I just CC'd the receipt to the personal emails of the entire school board, the local newspaper, and the State Investigative Bureau. He won't be able to hide a massive illegal kickback when it's disguised as a public police donation." Then, Ezra went straight for his safety net. Hammond had a robust, multi-million-dollar legal liability policy provided by the State Teachers Union. Using Hammond's cloned administrative credentials from a USB drive, Ezra submitted a formal, digitally signed confession of fabricating student disciplinary records to the insurance underwriters. It instantly voided his legal protection clauses and red-flagged his union membership for immediate suspension. Wednesday afternoon. The district superintendent had arrived on campus unannounced, accompanied by an auditor, prompted by the bizarre, highly incriminating IRS receipt that had flooded everyone's inbox that morning. Hammond was cornered in his office, frantically screaming into his desk phone, demanding his bank reverse a transaction they couldn't legally touch. He didn't know Ezra and I were standing right outside his frosted glass door, accompanied by two very confused and angry state detectives who had received the same automated email. Hammond ripped the door open to flee the building, nearly colliding with the detectives' badges. His face was slick with terrified sweat, his tie undone. His eyes darted to the officers, then landed on me, and finally on Ezra. "You." Hammond pointed a trembling, accusation finger at us, his voice cracking. "Detectives, arrest these two students immediately. They breached the district firewall. They are cyber terrorists forging financial documents to cover up their own impending expulsions." "We haven't touched a school computer since Monday, Mr. Hammond," Ezra said, his voice a perfect, chilling flatline. The lead detective stepped forward, holding up a digital tablet. "Mr. Hammond, the IP address that authorized the $50,000 transfer this morning pinged directly from your private desktop in this room. The exact same secured desktop that just sent a signed confession of fraud to your union representative. They spoofed the IP address." Hammond shrieked, his professional, untouchable facade completely shattering into pathetic pieces. He grabbed the wooden doorframe to keep his knees from buckling. "They set me up. This kid is a ghost. He's manipulating the entire grid." Ezra finally took a single step forward, closing the distance. He didn't look angry or triumphant. He looked profoundly disappointed. "Why would I possibly do that, Mr. Hammond?" Ezra asked, tilting his head slightly. "You said it yourself in front of the whole school on Monday. We're just furniture. We don't matter." Hammond lunged forward, pure animalistic desperation in his eyes, but the detective swiftly slammed him against the cinderblock wall. The heavy metallic click of handcuffs echoed loudly in the silent, crowded hallway. As the officers aggressively read him his Miranda rights, Hammond kept twisting his neck, staring back at Ezra as if looking at an absolute monster he had accidentally summoned. The school was dismissed early due to the chaos. As we walked out to the parking lot, watching Hammond's cruiser peel away toward the precinct, the adrenaline finally faded from my blood. It left behind a heavy, profoundly cold realization about the sequence of events. "You didn't just organically stumble onto that physical file during Truth or Dare, did you?" I asked, stopping near the line of yellow buses. "You knew his door was unlocked. You knew his computer was active. You knew the manifest was sitting right there." Ezra stopped walking. He turned his head and looked at the empty square of brick wall where the Oak Haven recruitment poster used to hang. "My older brother Julian was the very first kid transferred to Oak Haven last year," Ezra said quietly, the invisible weight of the past 12 months finally slipping into his voice. "He wasn't a criminal. Hammond forged his attendance records to secure the initial pilot contract with the facility. Julian tried to tell everyone the truth, but no one believed the quiet kid's brother." My stomach dropped as the pieces snapped into place. "You've been planning this execution since last year." "I had cracked his administrative password 6 months ago," Ezra admitted, turning to face me fully. "But if I leaked the documents anonymously, Hammond would have just claimed he was hacked by a disgruntled student, and the board would have swept it under the rug to avoid a scandal. I needed undeniable, physical witnesses to discover the paper trail organically. I needed you and Riley to be put in his crosshairs so the police would have a concrete motive to investigate his abuse of power. I just needed Riley to give me the dare." He had seamlessly manipulated the entire group from the shadows. He played the invisible, harmless background character for months, waiting patiently for the perfect afternoon to use us as the catalyst for his brother's revenge. He didn't apologize to me, and honestly, looking at the wreckage he left behind, he didn't need to. He saved us from a literal cage by using us as bait, dismantling a corrupt educational empire without ever raising his voice. I watched Ezra walk away toward the public bus stop, effortlessly blending back into the loud crowd of oblivious students. He looked ordinary, completely harmless, and totally invisible. "You really shouldn't have tripped over the furniture, Mr. Hammond."